Okay, I'm here tonight with Adam Bradbury. How you doing, Adam?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Will?
Very good, and I'll do my best not to call you Bradders all the way through this, just so there's
Thanks.
some sense of formality. So, conversation with Adam to start with is about how he kind of found his way into volleyball and where volleyball's taken him through his career. So, I guess just to get things started, how old are you now? You're
29.
29?
Mm-hmm.
You're 29, but you've only been playing volleyball for what, 12 years, just about?
Yeah,
Yes, you came
absolutely.
to sport pretty late.
Yeah, so I played a lot of sports, but volleyball was never available to me. I never knew of it, never saw anything. I remember watching some of the ep5 swatch on Channel 4 at 10 o'clock at night. That was about as close as I came to it. And then, yeah, I was a badminton player. Went away to the national college finals and met Sam Allen as he was captaining the college volleyball team, and that's where it all started. Yeah, meeting Sam, obviously Castle veteran, but he was my first volleyball person I met. Really, that was my introduction to volleyball, was meeting a team that without me knowing was one of the best in the country. I think they won or came second that year.
Yeah.
So excellent college team. So that was my introduction. It was through another sport that got me in.
Yeah, and you were a decent badminton player, weren't you? County level?
Yeah, so I played, I think it was one tournament, junior county. I trained with the junior county. Wasn't quite there, but loved it. I played for the first team in university. Obviously played the national college champ. So I was pretty good. Loved it. I think it's a great sport. But yeah, fortunately for me, I was slightly better at volleyball once I figured out how that worked.
Well, I think it's really interesting. One of the things that we've never really talked about, actually, we've known each other throughout that 12 years.
Yeah.
Like, we went to the same high school. I was there, obviously, I'm a fair bit older than you. I'm exactly 10 years older than you. So I know that's a school with zero volleyball pedigree whatsoever. When I was there wasn't even a sports hall. Had you ever played before you met Sam and those guys? Did you ever?
No.
No, never.
No, nothing. It just doesn't. And it's not like, if you don't have a football team in England, if you don't have a football at school, kids are going to play football because it's everywhere here. It's literally everywhere. Whereas volleyball, you don't see it. It's not around. So it's not like me and a friend would ever go, oh, should we play volleyball? It's just no. So it was nothing. And then I remember after I met them at the tournament, someone said, oh, you should come watch one of the games at the college. And I did. I was like, oh, this is like a real sport. It's not like people knocking a ball around. Like, just this realization of, you could see there's so much more behind it. The first time I saw it I was really impressed.
Yeah, we moved you in. We recognise, it's obvious, and it's what I think is quite interesting about your sporting journey, because you, without wanting to make you blush, you're an excellent athlete, and it's no surprise to me and Craig Hamford, who was one of your first coaches as well, to see what you got to. And our take on it really was, if only we'd did volleyball at Trentham High, you could have been, maybe not, you might have been a little bit too young, but you could have been on the verge of challenging for 2012 because you're such an athlete.
Yeah, that's very nice to hear, and thank you. But also on the flip side, one of the reasons I was so good at volleyball is, like, I spent a lot of years jumping and hitting stuff playing badminton. So, maybe if I had got into volley, I wouldn't have had the full body physicality. I think sports, the idea of specialism in sport is a big question mark. But for me, I kind of already specialized in volleyball without doing it, because I was really good at jumping and hitting stuff, which on reflection, that's something I've thought about, that really accelerated my journey. I can't think, maybe squash, but there's very few sports where you jump and swing your arm to hit something. It's not a common movement. So yeah, it's great to potentially think that, but there's also hundreds of hours that I was playing volleyball in a way. Or that's kind of how I see it. But yeah, I'm really lucky for me. I got to play with Frenchie, which was cool. And with the England squad, got to play with a lot of those guys. And just as much as I like to think I was pretty good, those guys were brilliant as well. They were amazing athletes who had work ethics like nobody's business. So yeah, it's nice to think, but those guys all deserved everything they got.
Absolutely.
They did amazing stuff.
What's your, I go a bit hazy in the memory about the time you were starting, because there was a hell of a lot going on in the club. And, you know, for me, it was around the time when I think it was around the time, a little bit after, when I became a dad and those kind of things. So loads going on.
Yeah.
But so I'd like to hear, what was your first memories of playing in matches?
The first match I think I played in was the National College Finals. So it was at Loughborough. So the team, I'd obviously didn't play the qualifiers because I was playing the badminton qualifiers, didn't make it in. And I just remember there being, like, I remember there being a lot I didn't know, but then also you'd get into the flow. Like, I didn't really know the rotations, but then when things were going right, I was doing stuff without knowing it. I was standing in the right spot. You know, when you're in that part of a team, when everyone's in the right spot doing the right thing, if you're not doing it right, you can tell straight away. So I remember that happening, just the flow. I remember Sam, he left. He didn't play on the Sunday because he had to go and play for Castle.
Yeah.
So I remember that being a thing of, oh, well, there's more than this. Like there's something that had been more than that. That was, you know, that was my first, that weekend was my first games ever, which was, you know, pretty incredible. And I remember serving at that level. Like, I remember Sam Stevens saying, guys, if we serve him, we win the point. And then us not being doing so. That was kind of my first avenue into volleyball coaching. Is like, there's sometimes you need to do simple stuff to win. So yeah, it was definitely thrown in at the deep end. You know, most people start off young when no one can do anything. But I was there, you know, on the first day Sam Allen was playing. He captained England juniors. And my first game was him on court. So yeah, I remember there was a lot going on. Now I look at that. If I watch video of that, I'd probably cry. It was probably the worst volleyball you've ever seen in your life. But for me, I felt like it was this dynamic machine, and I just tried not to be the salt in between it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we kind of rattled you through to try and get you into National League stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You went off to uni in Warwick, and we did various things to try and keep you involved in the club, selfishly because we saw your potential, but we also felt, maybe arrogantly, we were the best place to help you to learn and grow in the sport. But you became really quickly an integral part of a very young team, actually, that was a very young team with like me and Dave Lovell, effectively, as the old guys.
Yeah. I mean, that team was something pretty special as well, wasn't it, though? Because, I mean, I went to Italy with those boys. I think I was at uni then. Like, we went to Saywood.
We sneaked in just on age group.
Yeah, so there's me, Rashad, and Saywood. But I mean, that was the Loughborough boys as well, right? I saw on YouTube, actually, it popped up the other day, a video from that team with Ian McCallum, who went on scholarship, Shentz, Goody, Rue, me, you know, like all these young boys who just so happened. Ryan Heath, who, how many times he won the National League 3 times or something. Jenks played for us. He's still playing pro in Sweden. So, like, yeah, it was incredible. It was a young team, but I look in reflection now, I was one of the older ones, but I'm only a couple of years older than them. And then from me, it was you, Dave. So yeah, it was pretty. But when I was at uni, I'm sure you remember this. I used to get the train home.
Yeah.
I used to get the train home on a Friday night, make it for training Friday, work in a bar, play a game, work in a bar Saturday night that earned my train fare to go back to uni.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but that's kind of about getting to where I did. Those kind of choices are what makes the difference.
And you were willing to make those choices, weren't you?
Yeah. And I enjoy, obviously, if you want to be good at volleyball, you need to spend a lot of time doing it. If you want to spend a lot of time doing something, you should probably enjoy it. Unfortunately for me, it was that perfect storm of, you know, it was a good use of my time. It gave me something productive to do. It was a good team. I enjoyed being with the boys. I got to see my family, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it was a crazy time. Like, on reflection, and I used to have to walk to the train station from uni with like my bags, but it was amazing. Learned a lot, you know. And at that stage, just playing with a bunch of guys that were all developing, it was really fun.
Yeah.
You know, we were pushing ourselves every week. We were playing the best volleyball any of us ever had. We were playing against men who, you know, did things very differently. So yeah, it was a formative experience for sure.
Yeah, and you describe the layers of commitment and reason really, really well then, Brad, because, you know, you're at Warwick doing a maths degree, so it's a prestigious university, doing a tough course.
Mm-hmm.
You're enjoying massively learning this. It's still a new sport to you at that point.
Yeah, big time.
A new bunch of guys. You're traveling 60 miles to get home for a weekend. So yeah, you get to see your family. You're constantly layering on different decisions to do it. And I think that's really interesting, because I find in my conversations with young players, sometimes it's too easy to find a reason to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And you were always a guy who would look to find a way to say yes. Is that something that's just part of your makeup, or is that something you learned, or you know?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, looking at it from the other way, I hate this expression of like players who could have made it. There's no could have made it. If they didn't, they couldn't. Like, that's just it. Like, it's a frustrating one for me. And but also, I will talk about players who could have made it. But the volleyball is obviously a physical sport. But if you don't turn up to training, you're never going to play. It doesn't matter how tall you are or how much you jump. That doesn't work. And so, yeah, okay. There was something, obviously I didn't fall through the cracks, but also I actually was just talking to someone from Staff Uni, and it's also the people around you. Like, I was, obviously I had, you were saying that, like, already you've highlighted within yourself, you understand how people function. Like, I was looking to find the answers. You know, maybe you were part of the reason, or maybe Craig was, or maybe, you know, we're also a part of those boys who were all doing that. Like, all those boys were traveling from Loughborough. So I don't think I'm a special case, but I think everything about, you know, I've got a great family. They will have helped with that. I was in a great club. That will have helped with that. Like, everyone who's played in Castle knows it's a family. Like, we've got, you know, Richard Dobell's mum. Like, Richard Dobell, one of the best volleyball players we've ever made. His mum still makes the cake. Like, This is what the club is. You know, that's going to be a huge part of me wanting to stay. And then you can look at it in a million ways, but for me, the pivotal thing is I ended up making those choices. You can try and boil it down to science, but at some point it was the eventuality of those things. It's also a case of learning from it. You know, like, having done a lot of sport, like I trained a lot of badminton, you realize that things that you want, you have to make it work. Like, saying you want something, but saying, like, you know, I want to run a marathon, and just think you can turn up on that day, that doesn't work. If you want to run a marathon, that means you want to go and run tonight, and you want to run tomorrow. You know, and if I enjoy, one of the driving things for me is I enjoy playing high level volleyball. Like, whenever I look back on a big game, win or loss, I always enjoyed that, like, both teams going at it.
Yeah.
And that was my driving force. Like, if I really do enjoy this, which I did, how do I make that happen more? And that was it. That was my little mantra when I'm getting that bloody train. It's I enjoy that outcome, so it's going to be worth doing.
And it was. I mean, that team, you were in the first year at uni. I think Rue and Goody were in their second year at college. Ian and Stu and Shent were a year below that, and we won the second tier. You know, won promotion to the top league. And we won't bother talking about what happened after, because obviously everything changed at that point. With going off to uni and all those kind of things, but a real interesting set of people and set of decisions. So you finished, you know, you went through and you finished your time at Warwick, and you ended up going out to Australia.
Yeah,
but not to play volleyball.
No.
And it's that you were still, like, you know, a rough diamond, let's say, at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So tell me what happened to you in Australia.
So, I mean, on that rough diamond. So before I left, something that really stuck in my head was I went to Luxembourg with the national team and didn't play. That was like my kind of leaving England. My last event was traveling to Luxembourg, not playing a single point. Anyway, I finished my degree, and volleyball was one of the reasons I moved to Australia. The volleyball team in Warwick, I was the only English player on the team. So I met all these foreigners who were huge changing points in my life. Each one of them taught me something new. But the biggest thing that they all taught me is how much they got from living in a different country. Not visiting, not traveling, but they were all talking about how they saw their home differently, and how they never thought England would be like this. Not better or worse, just you couldn't compare. So I saw these people I had so much time for, I had so much respect for, and they all learned from this experience. And that's what it was down to. Like, if I'm ever going to do this thing, which I think is really good to do, it's now. I don't have a job, don't have a wife, don't have kids, don't have a house. If I'm ever going to do it, it's now. So that was it. So yeah, moved to Australia. Was very fortunate, you know, that I was able to find a job. I found a job as a nanny, but it wasn't about the job or the whatever. It was I wanted to live in another country. Being English, we don't speak another language, obviously. So it was Australia or America. So yeah, went over there. Obviously, being a volleyball player, first thing I did, local volleyball teams in your area. Found the Volleyball Australian VACT, which is the regional head of volleyball. Called them and said, "Hey, English guy, just come over, trying to find a club." And then got in touch with Balconen, where I met Simon Hone, who I ended up playing with actually in Sweden a few years down the line. Oh, like it's always the case. Some of the boys in that team, best mates ever.
Yeah.
But met them
you
to
brought him
play.
to play at Maidley.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? Yeah, pretty good. He also played for the Australian B team and played European Asian champs. So yeah,
Really?
Maidley's had some characters come
Epic
through its
star.
door. Yeah. So yeah, but met him. He was like the first person I met. It was actually, I was just before my 21st birthday. I went to a Balconen training, and I said to him, "Oh, boys, in a couple of days, it's my 21st birthday. I've been in the country for 4 days. You fancy grabbing a beer?" Being good lads, yeah, I went for a beer with them. So that started that. And very quickly from that Balconen team, which was playing in ACT, was asked to come and try out at the Canberra Heat, who played in the National League. The head coach of the Canberra Heat was Les Young, who is head of the Australian junior men's program, like manager of that. The assistant coach was Russell Bourgeot, who him and his brother Phil Bourgeot essentially founded the Australian men's program. So this program that's played the Olympics, that beats Poland in the quarters or semis of the London Olympics, him and his brother up in Queensland 40 years ago created the birth of that. So those are the guys who are now coaching me. And in Canberra was the base of the AIS where the Australian national team trained. So through bits and bobs, I started coaching with the juniors, went on national junior camps, and then helped them with training when they had, like, with it being the home base, if players were coming back or about to go overseas, they'd be training. So I got to train with, you know, Tom Edgar, who's the captain, obviously played a lot of volleyball in Japan. Got to play with all the guys at the time, Nemo, Sam Walker. So it was, for me, I was playing with superstars. So that was an amazing chance. Like, that was once a week, maybe, oh, we need a help. Can you help us out? Like, come and be a body and not screw up too much. I'll try my best not to screw it up. So I was getting like this top end feedback and then training and playing all the time with Canberra Heat. Trav Pass, who played, I think, 2 Olympics, he played on our team. He wasn't just like a guy. Like, we went on bus trips with him. So that was a real, for me, exposure, just thrown in the deep end of, this is high level volleyball, and you can't get bad in that environment. I was just surrounded by people who are really good at it and coaches who really know what they're doing. And yeah, I had 3 years there of just soaking up volleyball. I ended up working in VACT. So I started to really live and breathe volleyball. And yeah, that was a huge stepping stone for me. From that move to Australia, that was then when I got my trial to Sweden, and then ended up moving from Australia to playing pro in Sweden.
Halfway through a season, didn't you? Was it you joined half season first in Sweden?
Yeah, exactly. So a good friend, a guy I was playing on the National League team with Canberra Heat, Jordan Power, he was playing in Sweden. He got signed through an agent, through Just, quite a famous volleyball agent in the worst leagues. But he got signed and went over, came back to Australia for Christmas, and he came over to mine for New Year's Eve. He was outside. It was, 25 degrees or something. We were sitting outside all night because it's Australia, not England, at New Year's Eve. And he was like, "Oh yeah, one of our left sides just got his missus pregnant, and he's going to be stepping down. Like, he can't commit. He's not going to be playing." And like at this point, I was starting to play quite a lot of volley, feeling pretty good. I was like, well, I'd happily go and try and have a play of volleyball over there, like, if they're gonna whatever. And I ended up paying for my flight. So I paid for my flight to go and trial, because the reason I had for myself, like, 16-year-old me would kick myself if I didn't try. Like, I never thought this was an option, never thought it was possible. So yeah, basically he went back and like he started chatting to him while I was there. Then he went back and we were like, "Are we going to do this?" So yeah, I went over for 6 weeks. I still was working my job. I'd like put loads of things in place. Simon Hone was going in the office for me, printing stuff out. So I did 6 weeks of playing volleyball there. and then came home back to the real world. And then it was, a few things changed, personal circumstances changed, and like the stars kind of aligned that I was looking to get out of Australia. The club that I went on trial with said, we really like what you did, we want you to come back as a player and coach. So then that was that shift back from Australia across this way, and then that was the start of my first year in being a Walker.
What was the difference moving to play? You'd started off in your hometown club, sense of loyalty, sense of family, sense of identity. You've gone to Australia on a personal mission to kind of, it's a cliche I'm saying, and you didn't say it, but to kind of find yourself and explore who you are. That kind of find out
I just wanted to see the world, man.
Yeah, find out your place in the world.
Yeah.
And volleyball fitted into that and gave you a route to do that. And you learned massive. I remember us catching up when you first came back, and you learned so much about the game in that period of time. It's like you'd read the Bible, basically. Yeah. So it was real. I noticed a huge transformation in you then. But then going
in that transformation is why I just want to mention the thing that I went and played. I went to a trip with the England team and didn't get on court. And when I came back from Australia, I then went to a national team event as the captain. Like that's what happened in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like that was it. Like it was just, and it's not me. That again isn't me. I was just put in this environment with amazing facilities, amazing people. Obviously I worked hard and did it, but yeah, that is what that time over there did for me. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, huge. And then you went pro in Sweden, which I think is a really interesting place to go. It's a different place to go now than it was 15 years ago, when more of like my age group peers went over there, and lads who I grew up in the sport knowing. Kind of a upcoming league in many ways, better performing national team than it's been for a while. Nowhere near what it used to be 30, 40 years ago. Top team. But what was it like? What was the difference in the pro environment?
Yeah, and it's a really good way to ask the question. It's not what's the difference in the volleyball, because that's one part of it, but entering that arena is so different. So first off, it's a lot more ingrained in the society, right? Because obviously if it's pro, you're going to have fans. So even though the prestige isn't quite the same, like the volleyball, some of the volleyball I was playing in Australia was better level than the volleyball in Sweden, but there's no fans in Australia. So that changes things already. And with the pro environment, you get, so on our team, you're only allowed 3 internationals on court in Sweden. So the rest of the people are going to be local. We actually only had 2 in my first year. So there was 2 people being played, then the rest aren't being paid as much, and they're local guys. So then you have this weird mix of some guys who are, you look at games and it's like 2-on-2 almost. It's not at all, because that's not how volleyball works. We can say that joking, because I know I don't mean it, but there's just this different environment, and you can, as a pro, you can score 15 points in a game, but really if you're not hitting 20 points a game, you haven't done your job. So there's that side of it. There's also one of the biggest changes is when you have a day at work, you then go to volleyball to relax. It changes. You lose that part. So this thing that you used to do relaxing is now where all of your focus is. You also then need to find something new. And the thing that you used to be doing that relaxed you is now stressing you. So that alone is huge. And it might sound crazy, but one of the biggest things, the biggest difference was I finished a game, the first game of the season, I finished, and someone came up to me and gave me money. Instead of me having to pay my fees. And it could have been £1. And it wasn't a great deal. Anyone who plays low-level sport will tell you do not do it for the money. If you want to play volleyball for money, you're crazy. You do it. But just the fact that I finished a game and that interaction happened, that was just it. That was like, you've done it now. You've done it once. Somebody paid you to play a game. If you don't do anything else, but yeah, it's just a completely different everything. Even though the sport's still the same, the fact that it's now not your hobby, it's your job, that alone changes it. And then the fact that there's so many more people watching it, that changes. And then the sponsors are always there, that changes it. But it's also then how, like, we weren't a great team, but losing was fine. Everyone expected us to lose, but they're paying for us to be there. We have to look like we're happy to be losing. Like, yeah, we're happy, but also we're trying to get better. And it's just changed. You have to take it more professional. You have to be seen the full time to be the professional. So yeah, it definitely changes it.
I think that's fascinating, and there's various clubs actually do some really exciting things in England at the moment, and this season's just an absolute flipping nightmare for it, and not particularly for us actually, because the signings we've made, including yourself, but we'll talk about that elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think people like you who've gone and had that kind of experience, if we're going to take the sport forward in this country, what I think kids who are in the junior national program and the top players and people who are in the clubs, people like me or Bartek down at Bologna, could do with getting their heads into is the different challenge we're posing to players if we want the game to go to a different base. Even if it's semi-pro, even if it's, forget that, even if it's you don't pay fees.
Yeah.
There's a different expectation. So what you've just articulated is, I think, massively important.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also when you look at it's ground level stuff as well. It's how you get kids playing in schools, and like the work Vegas does. That's groundbreaking. Just the more people you can have, like the more spies you've got in schools infiltrating it, the more people who. And when we went to Italy, we saw it. The kids were there peppering better than 12-year-olds in England. But because they're at the volleyball and they go, like, that's why Castle's so great, as people come and watch, and that's why my club and the local clubs, our club, it's one of the worst teams. We have more fans than any other club every game, almost. The hall is at capacity at 9% of the game. Now the capacity is 250, but every week there's 250, and there's only 2,500 people in the town.
Wow!
But so everyone there plays volleyball. And that's where you really start getting it, and you want people to come to the game as a thing, and it's just a movement, but it all starts, like, volleyball's grown. It's only a young sport, and I think the more people who see it, the more it's going to go. And there's the pro side of it, but as we know, it's that triangle, right? And that's why if you look at what Frenchie's been doing, he's been trying to put back in sport. Pete's been trying to put back in sport. Ben Pipes putting back in sport. Like, those boys got so much from volleyball, and they're trying to put it back into the kids, because the more kids you get through, the more it's out there. And I think obviously yourself, you played and now you're pushing back into the club. Like, Castle has that. Like, Sam was coaching when I was playing, I think, and he always has been. Now Sam Stevenson and Rich, and it's just trying to you've just got to hit that critical mass, and you've got to do that on the ground, but like you said, you've got to also know what it looks like in these countries where it is established. And so we make sure that snowball's running the right way. It's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. And the problem is, here we're fighting football.
Yeah.
Everyone's fighting this behemoth that is untouchable in some ways. That saying like, oh, wouldn't it be good to have kids into this other thing? No, football is the way. Okay, fair enough.
I don't disagree with you there. But God, that crowd at Vingorka, that's the equivalent. If you think about, there's about 300,000 people live between Stoke and Newcastle. That's the equivalent of us having 30,000 in. Like,
and that was
put a Taraflex in the middle.
And it was amazing, and it really was special playing there, because every business was a sponsor, and everyone, but also the club did a lot. Like, the club was the community hub. Like, on that Saturday, people would go to the game, and then they'd go to the restaurant after, or they'd stay and have a cup of tea, and they'd raise money for the school, and it was at the local school. So it just was. And what I loved as a player there, and this again is where sport always wins out, is as a player, I know I'm doing something good there, because those kids are watching people being active and healthy on a Saturday. I think that's a really good thing for kids to see, like people literally celebrating people being healthy.
Yeah.
And that's where sport always has this advantage, and is that it comes from a good place. Like, we're just trying to enjoy being fit. Like, that's what it comes down to, and that's where it's going to win out. Maybe volleyball's the one that wins, but I mean, you work for the Youth Sport Trust. You work for the Volleyball Trust. You just want kids to be healthy, and same for me. Like, that's why I want to be a teacher. We've both been very lucky with what we've come through. like I think we're both happy and we both came through healthy and having great experiences and just want to share that. And
that's the magic. That's the power of it. That's the power of it.
yeah.
Now we're relatively tight on time. And you obviously came back and you did your masters. You played at Northumbria. You then went off to Dubai for a while to work, and you retired effectively from England stuff. And I'm not going to spend time talking about those elements of it because of the time we've got and the time I've stolen from you to have these conversations tonight, and I'm really conscious of it. So the last thing I just wanted to touch on for a couple of minutes, because it is amazing, right, that a lad who went to my school didn't have any volleyball posts and still doesn't have any volleyball posts and didn't touch a volleyball till he was 17 and a half, became the captain of England.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've never had this conversation with you, but like, what was that like?
It kind of was all in a flash, but it took 10 years, or not, 10 years basically. My life, I've kind of followed my nose a lot. I've been happy to make a decision based on the information around me and jump into it. Like I went to a different college than a lot of my friends because it was doing further maths. I'd been there for the maths quizzes. I really wanted to go there, so I did. I'm cool, you know. But I did that, and then obviously a lot of people move town for their university. That's no big feat. But then I jumped across to Australia, and I think the reason I wanted to bring up like these life jumps is when you make big commitments and when you're willing for things to change, these small changes kind of, you're not surprised. I wasn't surprised that when I started training with the Australian guys and was working really hard that I started getting better. I wasn't surprised when I was in Stoke traveling back. Like I was playing volleyball at uni, I was playing badminton, I was going to the gym, and I was playing games on the weekend. I wasn't surprised I was getting fitter. I wasn't surprised I was getting better at my sports. I think the biggest surprise was when I came back from Australia and I saw that comparison. Because I'd been living my life, I'd been living my volleyball life and just doing, I knew I was in a good place and whatever, but when I came back and saw the guys who were leaps and bounds ahead of me and I was now their peer, that's probably when it hit home of like, oh, like I was working hard in an environment that really supported it. That was probably it. It was that move back from, but then at the same time, like having them play pro a couple of seasons, I remember talking to the guys who played the Olympics, and when I used to see them talking, I used to think they were chatting about how good they are and how great, how terrible all of us are. But actually what they were talking about is how bad they were compared to like these great guys, you know, it's just, they're just reminiscing about the good times and like what it can be. But when you start playing pro, like that again gives you just a completely different outlook on how things can be. And wow, this guy really did that. And oh yeah, we sucked then, but now we're doing all right. So it's the same. For me, it's my only journey. I can't compare it to, you know, I didn't start playing in Castle, then drop playing. Like it's the only one I have, and it made complete sense to me. The whole thing makes sense because I've been with it the whole way. But yeah, when I look back, I'm really fortunate. There could have been a million and one things that went other ways, and maybe if I didn't play volleyball, I'd be like smart or I don't know, something like that.
Well, you are a very intelligent guy, and you know we'll wrap up this conversation. I'm going to have the last word if you'll let me, and we're all hugely proud of what you managed to achieve. I think you're an incredible story, to be honest, mate, and I think we're fortunate a number of you have come through at a certain time, a similar period, and you've all, as you said, followed your own paths, but yours is a truly unique one. And like to become England captain as a lad from Stoke who went to Fenton Sixth Form and Fenton High School is amazing, and you should be proud of yourself because we are all hugely proud of you. So well done.
Thank you very much.